And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Fleet Commander is one of my favorite games. I just love the way that it delves into Star Trek and feels like you're playing a whole season of Star Trek in a single game. Well, here we have the first expansion, I hope of many, for the game, the Romulan Empire. And of course, you know, the original one was the Federation against the Klingons, and of course this is the most clamored for expansion to the game, the Romulans. Who's not going to want to see the Romulans? So let's take a look at what comes in this game, and I'll talk about the different parts of this expansion. Well, let's take a look at the ships that are included in the game first. Now, here's the ships from the original game, it's shown for comparison. Here are the new Romulan ships. You can see that they are essentially the same kind of molds and stuff. They really do need to be washed, as a paint wash put on them to bring out the detail on these. But I like the way they look. They're different colors, so they're easily distinguishable from the other two. The green has almost a little bit of a menacing look to it, and I love these ship models. Now, of course, you know, in the TV shows and movies, good guys know how to model their ships so that their ships all look different, while the bad guys tend to use the same thing over and over. But that doesn't prevent these from still being some pretty cool models. I really like the larger Romulan ships, and the Valdor itself is one of my favorite models in the game that just looks so menacing. It's not as menacing as you might think. The Romulan ships are powerful, but at the same time they're not as powerful as some of the Federation ships and the Klingon ships. Now, I look at the Romulans as bad guys, which, you know, they are. I know they're working with the Federation now, but I don't really care. They're still bad guys to me, so I'm thinking you go and fight. But the Romulans are all about espionage and cloaking, and so that's really emphasized on their ships. Their ships all can cloak, and many of them have special abilities for cloaking. They're useful, and they can fight off the Federation and Klingon ships, but the big thing about them is the fact that they can cloak. In fact, there's a new rule added in this game that you can cloak for movement points, movement values, which allows the Romulans to cloak even faster and get around and start doing things. Now, you'll notice with these ships that on the side here, when you draw your missions at the beginning of the game, there's an espionage number. And in fact, the game comes with two ships, one for the Federation, the Excelsior, and one for the Klingons, the Kronos. These are alternative cards to the base set that also have this espionage. A new console thing is included so that these new espionage cards can be added. We already have the Science, Intelligence, and Combat. The espionage cards, of which there's a whole deck included in this game, are placed here at the bottom. So let's look at these espionage cards. Now, you can draw these when you've gone through your little deck of mission cards, and so the Federation enters the Excelsior and the Klingon ship that you can get these espionage cards, but these are mostly here for the Romulans, at least for now. And you can see that these cards are all about espionage. Here we move 3 enemy control tokens in the same turn, or here you have 6 cloak tokens deployed. Or here, an opponent exposes a sensor echo. Now, there's a lot of secret missions in here. I haven't counted them out, but it seems like there's more secret missions in the espionage deck than anywhere else. Force one of your opponents to discard a mission card. You do that and you get a victory point. Here you have a cloak token in each location adjacent to an enemy command post. Or here, place a crew card in an enemy ship. So these add to the fun, and I like having 4 different decks to draw from, so that's a nice addition to this game. The game also comes with all the tokens and actions and things that you need and a command post. You can now play a 3-player game very solidly. The rules show you how to set it up, where you have Klingons versus Federation versus Romulans, and so that's pretty neat. And the game comes with more locations that you can use. The locations are, there's nothing really to write home about. They're kind of more of the same of the original stuff. Nothing super neat, but it gives you more hexes to put out and make a bigger board. The game also comes with victory point chips, so more of them, and that's a big deal because in this game they changed two of the rules, where your first star base that you put out and your first ship that you destroy each give 2 victory points instead of 1. Seems like a small deal, but it can make a big deal. It makes doing both those things more worthwhile. Now, I suppose I'm a speciesist here because I don't really know much about Romulans. I don't know all the different folks in there. Here's the 10 decks of cards that come with this game, and you can mix those up. You have anything from Balance of Terror to Redemption to Duplicity, the Invisible Threat, Manipulation. These guys aren't really the good guys. But it does have a lot of different Romulans in the game, and if there's anything I learned from watching the series is that you really never want a Romulan aboard your ship. But there now is the ability to do that. There are some people who have a saboteur ability. And when you have a saboteur, you can actually put that on someone else's ship. Now, when you do that, look at this. You're giving them +1 to sensors. Well, why would you do that? Because you can discard the person as an espionage action and then do whatever it says. In this one, decloak this ship. Espionage abilities are only usable by a saboteur's controller. So I can decloak your ship when you're on it. So if you're a Klingon, I'd probably put it on one of your ships and decloak your ship at the right time. Or look down here at this gentleman Pardek here. This ship may not initiate combat when you're on board. That's a real pain in the neck to put this guy on there. He's someone who wants peace. And so there's a lot of neat things like that. A lot of the Romulan cards have things to do with weapons, but they often have things to do with weapons when you come out of warp. They got your plasma torpedoes, Romulan commanders, and a Romulan centurion. And there's all sorts of neat cards that you can add to the game. Disruptors and ambush and Toreth. Oh man, she's a pain in the neck. There's all sorts of things. And so this is one of the big draws of this because the Romulans really bring a different feel to the game. And that's interesting to me. I like when games come with forces that are basically very different in how they act. I've come to the conclusion that I'm a Klingon. I just like to go in and fight and kill stuff. But I don't mind this little duplicity that the Romulans have. But I mean, if you play the Romulans guns a-blazing, you won't do well. You've got to cloak. You got to cloak often, and you got to. I mean, cloaking was in the original game, and the Klingons used it. But man, the Romulans, that's all they're about. That and that saboteur, and the Romulans are the people that you hate to play against because they're so annoying. But the game is still neat, still brings forth that Star Trek feel to it. This adds a good chunk of stuff to the original game, and so I'm glad because I love Star Trek fleet captains anyway. Now I have 3 different races to play with, so much stuff. But when is the next expansion?
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find the latest board game news at Dicetowernews.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Fun Again Games, the world's best game source. Fun Again Games has over 5,000 games available. Check them out at funagain.com.
Shut the door!
Do.